What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm on Toxin Gaming. Today we are going to be going over my top 3 macro decks that I've been going over the last couple of days since we got the full leaks of the entire Speed Duelist of Shadows box. And I hope you all enjoy. But we're going to start off with, my first deck that I was creating and series drafting with. This is the Setting Sun deck based around macro. Or not macro, Helios. It's obviously based around macro. Every one of these decks are based around macro, so keep that in mind before we continue. Helios itself is a monster card with question mark attack and question mark defense, and it gains 100 attack for each card that's banished. Duos Helios, he does the same exact thing, except he gains 200 attack, and when he's destroyed by battle, he gets special summoned during the end phase with 300 attack. And then Trice Helios, it's 300 attack for each card that's banished, can attack monsters on the field up to twice per turn, and if it's sent to the graveyard by battle, or just sent to the graveyard, I think, destroyed by battle instead of this turn, you can special summon this card, and it gives 500 attack points. So these guys are kind of like interesting, and that's all they really are. Helios is the best one out of the three of them because it gets summoned off of Macrocosmos, but the reason why we have him in here is because of Setting Sun, which is the brand new Professor Banner skill. I can't remember his name. Amnael. Brand new Amnael skill. It says once per turn during your main phase, if you control a monster with an attack of question marks, so you activate macro, it resolves. You special summon Helios. You can use this skill. You can banish one card from your hand and add one monster from your deck to your hand with question mark attack, but with a different name than the card you control. So what you do here is you banish the card and you add one of your two pieces, or you add Grand Maju because Grand Maju has question mark attack and question mark defense. So it's pretty neat. The other part of this effect is Helios monsters you control cannot be banished. So these guys get sent to the graveyard to proc their effects whenever you have macro in the field. It's definitely an interesting deck, and I feel like this build in particular is fine for basing your skill off of this, but it's generally, I feel like if you base it more off of Grand Maju, it's probably going to be a better build, but I wanted to base it off of Helios more than anything, because it fits the character more, you know what I mean? So yeah, like I said, we have one of each copy of the card. You can interchange this as much as you want. The only thing I would say is make sure that you have at least one Helios in the deck, because the deck does not work if you don't. Maju is sitting in the deck at 2. This card could definitely go to 3 if you wanted it to. You can cut any card you really want out of this deck to try and figure it out. Obviously, any ratios you wanted to go with is your decision, not mine. I'm actually on the 3 DD Warrior Lady as our 3 of for this list. I think this card is very strong, especially in this format in particular. It's going to be a force to be reckoned with because you're going to be up against a lot of very strong monsters that get special summoned very quickly, and being able to set this card face down and not get super polymerization away for the evil hero cards is going to be really nice. We also have Kaiku's a Ghost Destroyer. This is genuinely just in here. Just to be here, I guess. I mean, being able to banish the cards from your opponent's graveyard whenever it does damage is really strong in itself. It's a level 4 1800 beater, so the stats are really nice too. It just does really well with this deck in particular. We're also going to be running these 3 Macrocosmos in here because it's the bread and butter of the deck. You want to get to this card as fast as possible, and if you don't, it's okay because you have other cards that can banish in this deck as well. 3 Wall of Disruption. This card is probably going to be a staple in every deck, this format. I 1010% see it. People are probably going to be running this card at 3 in every deck. There's no reason why you wouldn't. We're on 2 of the No Man of Extermination because we're not on the Cosmic Cyclone. No Man of Extermination is a interesting card that targets set spell and trap cards your opponent controls and destroy it and banishes them. So that's really nice in itself. When that card is banished, if it's a trap card, both players banish all copies of that trap from the deck to the graveyard. So if you end up hitting your opponent's Wall of Disruption, it's not a bad thing for you in this deck because you get to banish all your Wall of Disruptions with it, and then you just make your Maju and your Helios is stronger. So that's pretty cool. And then we have one Nobleman of Crossout. This is to hit the defense position decks. I think defense position decks are going to make a comeback this format, like I previously said. The reason why is just because being able to pay 2,000 life points for the new Evil Hero skill to steal an opponent's monster to Super Poly with is going to be very strong. It reminds me a lot of the Inner Conflict skill. Going into the side deck itself, we're looking at 2 of the Galaxy Cyclones, which are brand new cards for this set. I think this card in particular is going to be very good this format, just because it destroys set cards, and even if your opponent chains, like say they chain macro when you activate this card will still destroy the card, because what it says is that it doesn't destroy the target, it just destroys it. Unlike, No Man of Extermination, target one face down spell or trap card on the field, destroy that target. This card does not say that. It says on the field, destroy it. So that's nice in itself. So this card they'll activate macro. Macro will go Chain Link 2. Chain Link 2 will resolve. Then Chain Link 3, Galaxy Cyclone will hit and destroy it. It's pretty solid, not going to lie. Defusion is really strong in this format. You're going to be seeing this in a lot of my side decks. Defusion hits the fusion monsters with most of ease, kills them, or returns them back to the extra deck, and they've wasted their skill for this duel, so they're no longer going to be outing your monster, and you outed it with a simple spell card. The trap in this deck is going to be Windstorm of Edequa, or Taqua, however you pronounce this card. This card's really good in the Cloudian deck. After testing, I found that Cloudians were very strong in this format. Might be the deck that I'm mainly on if macro doesn't do as well as I think it's going to do. But I think this card is very strong against that deck in particular. If you open it against that deck, you just nuke their entire field, and that's just crazy to me. Obviously, we have the Waking of Dragon Bluffs, but there's nothing really worth to go over there. Going over the second deck that we have here today, we're actually going to be going over the Professor of Alchemy skill. Now, this skill is interesting. I do like it. It's not a bad skill. But in testing, I found that the best way to be playing this skill is in a control-based strategy where you are summoning your Alchemy Beast cards to tribute for your Golden Homunculus, but if you don't have your Golden Homunculus, you can still use those tokens to chip at your opponent for damage, and that works really well with Burn. So what it just says is that Alchemy Beast tokens can attack directly. Once per turn during your main phase, you can banish a level 4 lower monster from your hand or face up on the field. Alright, and then special summon an Alchemy Beast token with the same attribute as the banished monster. It cannot be tributed except for the summon of Golden Homunculus. So, of course, our monarch for the deck is going to be triple Golden Homunculus. This card just says gains 300 attack and defense for each of your banished cards, which makes it a little bad, but because it's focusing on you in particular, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. Helios is in this deck at 2. This is just for when it gets special summoned off of macro. You have multiple copies of it. We are on the DD Scout Plane, which is a newly added card to this deck. And Scout Plane is really good in conjunction with the skill because when it gets banished from your hand, it comes back during the end phase. So you have another body on the field. Unfortunately, it does come back in attack position, which is a little lame, but it will continuously come back. So that's pretty nice. DD Survivor is in this deck at 3. I like this card a lot, and I feel like any macro deck is probably going to be wanting to main deck this card at 3, just because it can return back during the end phase if it's face up on the field. So your opponent can't really find a decent way to get rid of it if you have macro on the field. It's just continuously reoccurring, and that's nice. I like that a lot. The Lady Assailant of Flames is one of the first burn cards we're going to be going over for this deck. Assailant of Flames is really strong, just because you get to banish the top 3 cards of your deck, so you're giving attack power to your homunculus, and then you inflict 800 damage to your opponent, which is a decent amount of attack points in this game. It's not even, it's like, what is it? I can't even think of the math, but 800 damage is a lot. Then, of course, we have Koala, which on flip, you get to burn your opponent for 400 cards for each card in their hand. So, again, we're just playing really strong burn cards in this deck. And it works really well because, you're hitting them for 8, you're hitting them for 4 plus, it's like 4, 8, 12, 16, depending on where they're at in the game. Both these cards are really good in this deck in particular because you are sitting there with the homunculus tokens and hitting them directly as well along with this. A Cat of Ill Omen. Now this is a card I was testing out and it's actually nuts in this deck. This deck in particular because you're playing so many defense flip effects. Cat of Ill Omen just searches your Macrocosmos and puts it to the top of your deck. So we're only playing it at 2. You can definitely cut it to 1 if you don't like it or just cut it completely. But in a 30 card build like this, I definitely wanted to find a way to get my macro to my hand faster, and this was the card to do it. So, of course, macro is being played at 3. It is the bread and butter of the deck. It summons your Helios. It banishes cards and makes your homunculus stronger. It's just really good. Wall Disruption is also going to be sitting here played at 3 because it's one of the main staples of the deck. Our 3 for this deck is going to be Floodgate Trap Hole, being able to control the board and then flip your flip effects up. That way you can banish some of your homunculus out. That way you have a force that can climb these cards eventually. It's just probably the best card to play in this deck in particular. Summon of Spirit, it is a burn deck, so you did want the best burn card in Speed Duel history to be in this deck, so this is going to be our 1 of off this ban list. And then Allure of Darkness is going to be our 2 of. If you pitch the DD Scout Plane off of Allure of Darkness, you essentially just allure it for free. It's really nice in that regard. But yeah, so your dark targets are the Cat of Ill Omen, Koala, DD Scout Plane, and DD Survivor. So you are playing a decent amount to be playing your Allure of Darkness in here. So you definitely just have it in here for this reason. Your side deck is going to be Offerings to the Doomed. You can definitely change this for Defusion if you absolutely want to, but this deck in particular does really good against the new evil hero deck. The reason why is just because your cards are being set face down more than anything, and if they steal any of these cards in particular, you have Floodgates, you have the Wall of Disruptions, you have the Zomas. Like, they can steal these cards if they absolutely want to. In fact, you kind of want them to in a way because you get the Macrocosmos. Like, it's so good. Or not, yeah, yeah, you get the Macrocosmos to card, and then Golden Homunculus just comes out, and yeah, he gains 300 attack and defense. It's a neat deck. I definitely, Wetflex is the one who gave me the idea for this. But yeah, Offerings is in here over the Defusion, just because this deck has a good, like, fight against that deck. Magic Drain is actually in here. Now, the reason why is a weird one. Shield Crush hurts this deck, and Nobleman of Extermin, or Nobleman of Crossout also hurts this deck. Now, Shield Crush hurts this deck more than Cross Out, but yeah. You obviously can't change this to the Super Polymerization, but you can change it to the Dark Fusion and I can't remember the other name, but any of the spell cards your opponents are going to be using this format, this card can negate, and they have to rip a card from their hand to stop this effect from resolving, and if they can't or don't want to, then hey, that's good for us in the end. Windstorm is also in here for Cloudians because, again, they're probably going to be one of the better decks this format after testing. So I definitely just want to have the ability to play against that deck. Alright, and next on our list is going to be the Macro Monarch list. This was the list I was the most excited for until I saw the cards we got. But it is my favorite list. I love Macro Monarchs. It is one of my favorite decks that I ever played in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, and this is the list that I've come up with for it. So the skill we're using in this is, as you can see, Switcheroo. You just return a card from your hand, shuffle it back into the deck, and draw a new card. The reason why is because we're looking for a macro here, because we absolutely need it to special summon our Helios. That way we can play the game. It is our special summon for the deck, so that's why it's here. So we're on the Helios at 2. Definitely after, like, you can play test it. I've been going back and forth on 2 and 3. This is definitely your choice altogether. I was bricking on the third copy. Sometimes I even brick on the second one, but other times it was like I needed the other one in deck when playing the deck, and I was just like, unfortunate. D2 Survivor, again, it works really well with the Macrocosmos and works really well with your Monarch-based strategy, being that it comes back during the end phase. So when your opponent kills it or whatever during their turn, it'll come back because you had macro and it got banished, and then you're able to tribute it again for your Monarch. DD Warrior Lady is going to be sitting here as 2 of our 3 ofs in the deck. I think that it works really well. Again, I've been going back and forth with this card being Cosmic or Cosmic Cyclone or being the DD Warrior Lady. But yeah, I'm liking it having the monster removal in the deck. It's good for the Cloudian matchup. It's good for the Evil Hero matchup. Like, this card is just really good in general. And I think that this format, we might be seeing more of it coming back to the format. The Monarch of choice is Amazoness Queen. Now, this is something I wanted to go over with you all. So if we go here, we were already there. We're going to go to Speed Duels. We're going to go Previous Options, go to Monsters. We're going to go to level 5 to 6. Now, these are our Monarch monsters. So the best ones are probably going to be the ones that are like 2300 or more attack. Like, that's the best thing we can assume. And so, of course, the only one that comes to mind that I like is probably going to be Armed Dragon level 5. But you have to send a card from your hand to the graveyard, like a monster from your hand to the graveyard to use its effect. So you can't use it under macro. So you can't use this card. Blowback Dragon's a good option. But you can't use Hades this format. You can't use Grand Marg this format. You can't use, what's the other one that I was using? Oh, Malicious Edge. You can't use Malicious Edge in this format. You can't use any card based around the graveyard in this format. So, like, we already went over Armed Dragon level 5 being one, but, like, Kaiser Glider is one of them. Because they're based around the graveyard. There's not a lot of Monarchs in this format for you to actually be throwing into here and being like, yeah, we're going to be nice. And if you're sitting there wondering, why can't we use Grand Marg? Why can't we use Dark Ruler Hades or Gap or anything like that? Or Evil Hero, Malicious Edge? And the reason becomes they're all Fiends and Rocks. And making your opponent pay the 2,000 to use their skill is really nice, but they're still playing the Super Polymerization in their decks. And yeah, you don't want your Fiend monster that you just established to get super polyed and then you get hit with, 2450 plus whatever other monster they used. So that's the big thing in my opinion. You don't want to lose the game because of your own monster. Make them use their skill. So I opted for Amazon's Queen. It can't be destroyed by battle, so that's about the only reason why it's here. You can play with it defensively if you absolutely want to, until you can get to your like warrior ladies or your convergence or anything like that. But it's still just a pretty nice statted monarch with 2,400 attack points and a nice statted defense points of 18. So I think it's probably the best monarch of choice. Because you're playing macro, you can't play Jinzo, and that was the only other one I was thinking of. Again, if you wanted to play blowback, you can. This one's probably the better one to play this format, just because it doesn't base around anything. But yeah, so originally, actually, in this deck, I wasn't even playing the Switcheroo skill. I was playing the not interconflict, Twisted Personality skill, and I was playing the new Archfiend of Lightning card, which just says that you pay 500 life points for each of your standby phases, and that will give you a counter onto your skill. He's a 2,500 beater that can't be targeted by card effects, and when he is, you roll a dice, and then if you hit 1, 3, or 6, you get to, destroy the card that targeted it, which is cool, I guess. So you get to negate the effect, and then if you roll a 1, 3, or 6, destroy that card. So Book of Moon doesn't work on this guy, right? But it doesn't matter because your opponent, you can't use, Super Poly because it says neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. So maybe it might be able to negate if you hit that one. Again, I'm not a judge, so if that's how that works, then definitely play that card over this. But yeah. Wall Disruptions, that's 3 Zumps at 1. Convergence is at 1. Galaxy Cyclones in the main deck at 1, and Cosmic Cyclones in the main deck at 1. Both of them are just getting rid of back row. And yeah, this deck loses hard to the Monarch deck. So we have 3 of the Defusion in here. We have 1 of the Waking the Dragon, just for whenever they do want to hit us with any of our back row, if you're noticing a lot of back row hate from the opponent. And again, we're on the double Windstorm. Our, Waking the Dragon targets are the usual ones. This box didn't change that one bit. And yeah, if you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure you leave a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe to see more. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.